Okay. Oh, I got to read that. Can someone else read it? Because I can't.
Sure. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, this meeting is being conducted remotely using the Zoom platform. The following information is also provided for members of the public to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link https://us02 web.zoom.us/j/909-174-0347, meeting ID 909-174-0347, or from a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter the meeting ID 909-174-0347. If you have not registered with Zoom, you will be asked for your name and an email address. Note that no participant ID is needed. Just press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. And also it's either *6 or *7 to mute if you're on a phone.
Thank you very much, Todd. Sincerely appreciate it. Okay, so on the agenda tonight, we've got 17 separate items, but we're going to get it done in 2 hours. And we're not going to go into much depth. We're going to,
Jack, should we open it with a roll call?
okay, we can start.
Yes,
that.
everything needs to be roll call on Zoom.
Okay.
Yes, but for a roll call for attendance. And, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a roll call if we could. And then we're going to ask for comments from the members of the public. Todd Dwyer. Paula.
Here.
Myself, I'm here. We've got 2 potential open members who have not yet been openings, who have not yet been certified by the selectmen. And I would like to, and as I did prior to the start of it, I introduced Matt Proctor and John Beal, who hopefully will be filling those slots. We also have Rob Oliver. And Rob, I don't know, are you supposed to say you're here, Rob? I think so. You're not here?
I am here.
Okay.
Rob Oliver is not here, though. Rob
Yes,
Oliver.
Rob Oliver is not here.
It's Oliver.
Oliver. Okay, I'll fix that one.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize for that, Rob.
I knew you were too polite to say it.
Yeah. Hey,
Pretty
Hey,
much.
it's Massachusetts. We add ours everywhere and take them away.
and I am the world's worst speller, so that's okay. No, it's not if you're Rob Oliver. So anyway, and Dawn is with us.
I'm here.
Good job. And I owe an apology to Dawn, and that I failed to send her the agenda the first time and include her, but she's a very dear and wonderful participant in this meeting. Dawn, thank you, and I apologize again.
No problem, Jack.
Okay. And we have our 2 guests, as I mentioned. Is there anybody else in this meeting that we want to, that we haven't mentioned? No, not yet. Okay. Oh, excuse me. We've got this other character that wasn't on the list. And this Heather somebody or other. Lemieux. And Heather, you want to say hi? Inspire us or anything?
I don't know about inspiration, but yeah, you got my last name pronounced correctly.
Oh, there you go. Do I dare not? Okay. So anyway, are there any comments from the members? And if I would, I'd like to also make a comment in a little different format, but it'll go quickly.
No
Are there any
comment.
comments from any of the other members?
No.
Okay, seeing that we're not hearing any others, I just wanted to, oh God, it didn't, oh, it's a Word document, excuse me. Where did it go? Oh boy. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll send it to you. Why wouldn't that not come up? It's there. And it's coming up over here. Never mind. Okay, basically, Todd, you'll remember this. We went and did an analysis of what we were seeing after rainstorms when we were in conservation. And we saw things at Summer Street, Baker Brook. We even saw the washing of the sands right at Wayland Park area. And basically, our lakes and streams continue to see quite a bit of pollution going in. And we even had a picture of a used condom sitting on the beach right next to the kids' beach. I mean, it's pretty interesting. The Summer Street has had a redo. And with the good news, we got a retention pond there that's collecting all that stuff, but we don't know, is that on the schedule? What is happening? But there is an overwhelming need for what we're doing. And this is pretty significant in terms of the quality of the water that we, drink, bathe in, fish with, and all that. So anyway, that was my point. Okay. Did we have any, did you have a chance to look at the other minutes at all?
I did.
You did? Okay. Should we ask for, did everybody else get a chance to look at the November 4th minutes?
I did.
Okay. So if we have 3 members, all we have to do is I'll accept the
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of
November the 4th.
November the 4th and December the 16th.
Okay.
Second.
And I for myself. So,
Uh,
oh, I'm sorry. And now
We have
vote,
to roll call.
please. Yeah, vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Paula. Okay, so anyway, we're
You have to say aye.
aye.
Jack.
Thank you. Aye. It's unanimous. How about that? Okay.
No, you have to actually vote though, Jack.
Oh, I do. I said aye, didn't I?
Okay, yes, you did now.
Okay, so now we've got all the voting members that we needed. Okay. Expansion of the team. Paula, prior to jumping on, but I think you know John Beal and young Matt Proctor. There is only one Matt Proctor in town,
No, there are 3.
There's another one.
There are 3.
Well, he's young though. He's a young Matt. So we're in Heather. We're going to try and get him in front of the selectmen. And Todd, you're introducing that. Is that what you were
Yes.
saying?
Yeah,
And-
we're on the agenda for the February 15th meeting.
okay.
So I've had an opportunity to work with both John Beal and Matt Proctor, and I want to thank you both for coming forward. I think you'll be very valuable assets to the committee.
Second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the
I just want to say, and I should do this, is just in the interest of disclosure, Matt is married to my niece, just in case anyone needs to know that.
Doesn't everybody know that?
Well, no, I don't know if everybody knows that, but I'm just disclosing that.
I appreciate it, but I checked that out actually, and where they're not there, if there were 2 members living in the same household, that would become a problem. But
Okay.
it really isn't a problem.
We're both very independent people, so there will be no conflict of interest whatsoever. Aren't we, Matt?
That's for sure.
Matt, we're depending on you to hold her down. You're going nuts on us. Okay, so anyway, the piece of stuff, one of the topics that came up, and I think Todd did a really good job in saying, look, times are changing and the climate change, and we should be looking at the original mission statement and enriching that. And, the question is, what should we be inserting into this? And what would make sense, especially where we want to perhaps say something about funding and making sure that we have available funds to meet the team. But those are things that came up. And by the way, the things that are on this agenda tonight are really just a compilation of our prior session and what this team was looking for, as well as some of our inputs from some of our stakeholders. So that's kind of driving this agenda, and we'll continue to explore the current state in what we find. But anyway, what makes sense? Do we want to get into the flood planning and the phosphorus, the sediment? And what are the other towns doing? And I'm not asking us to work on that mission statement right now, but I would be looking for a volunteer or a couple volunteers to see and start mushing around the mission statement. You don't have to make your decision right now, of course, but perhaps we can break loose and enhance that and talk to some of the other stakeholders as well. Otherwise, we could spend 3 hours just on that in a workshop. So that would be a question. Okay, the website. We need to rethink that and upgrade it for a lot of different reasons. It's gotten old. We need to add some more members there. There's some elements that not necessarily appropriate anymore, but I believe this is going to become the primary communications vehicle from us to the town and trying to influence the town. And we'd be looking for someone to start owning that, Adam, and working with you or working with the team and trying to enhance that website. And I do appreciate we got the names right and maybe expand it, but if you could create a planning session, Adam, and suggest a couple of members join into that, we might be able to start evolving that. And I'm assuming that you're the owner of the website right now.
Town's the owner of the website. I have ability to edit it.
Okay.
And organize it, but I guess the task force needs to kind of decide what they want it to be and what they want up there.
Okay.
So some of the suggestions I would have is any information that's gone out to residents. There's been limited information, but certainly there has been information that's been sent about do's and don'ts associated with stormwater. One of the things that I would like to do is to enhance that publication and expand on that. I've done a number of those for Hickory Hills, and I'm happy to work on that type of thing. Links to state sites with information. So I have a number of ideas about the ways that we can improve the website, and I'm happy to send out those ideas and put together a list if that's something that would be helpful.
Sure. Absolutely, Paula. You want to create a small workshop? Because if we can get a few members.
I'd like to see Paula's ideas first and kind of mull that over and maybe we keep this on the agenda for the next meeting or maybe the meeting after. So once we get a chance to go through Paula's list, we can all mull it over, put some thought into it and give some feedback.
Yeah, I think that's the best approach as well.
Yeah. I think,
And if you want to get me that information, I can actually make a draft of the website that we don't publish, and at the next meeting we can put it up and you can look at what's there, see what it links to, and we can talk about if you want to move stuff around or things like that.
right. Paula, I would be thinking that this is going to be on the agenda a lot because we're going to be communicating more pieces. We're going to be sending out general bulletins. We're going to be trying to get people to start going there to read what's really happening. So it's got to be something that, oh, I saw this last month, and maybe, like you've got your waves aspect and everybody reads it. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's every couple of months, whatever makes sense.
So you're talking about a newsletter approach, I think, is what we do in Hickory Hills is we have the waves, and then if there's something going on that month, we have what's called the Hickory Hills Happenings, which is something that goes out just telling people what went on recently or what's coming up. I don't know that the website, I mean, if we have enough content, certainly, if you look at the town's website, there is a news section in the front with important headlines that are going on or important information that's current. I was thinking more of, general information for our page, but if you want to incorporate a newsletter or something like that, we certainly can. But frankly, I don't think we're there yet. But I don't know what other members think. But I think we start with the website, and as the committee gets rolling, then perhaps we have enough data and information to incorporate something like that. But I don't think we do currently, but certainly open to suggestions.
And there's ways to structure it as well. Obviously it's always on our website, but the links, you put a link into the other series of documents by date and such that people can come back and look at the history of all the newsletters. So that's something that Paula, if you want to take the lead on that.
Well, I think I think we have sort of different approaches. My thought is the content, because there's not a whole lot of content on there right now. I think we want to get content up. But as far as newsletters, right now, we really don't have any. Our minutes are available through the minutes section of the website currently. When we get to a point where we have bulletins or information that we want to send out, then certainly we can incorporate that. But I personally, and I'm curious to hear from Todd, I don't think we're there yet for any kind of, month-to-month newsletter. Right now, our newsletter really is our minutes until we get really, into a game plan.
Yeah, I agree with Paul on this one, because frankly, right now, we're lucky to get month-to-month meetings. So,
Right.
But once we become more consistent and actually start tackling some of the issues that face us, I think maybe it would make sense then. But I think minutes are because they're available, they kind of can give folks a summary of what they need. One thing is maybe just adding a link onto our page to the minutes page, because if people are looking for them, that could be useful. But
Yep.
I mean,
and yeah, exactly.
Okay. So our website is the core piece that's going to drive everything else in terms of communications.
I don't know if it's going to be the core piece. I think that the people who participate in town tend to watch the meetings and listen to the meetings and that. And I think the meetings are what drive everything in the town.
Okay.
Well, and from a stormwater perspective, one of our focuses needs to be on education as well. I mean, once we identify issues and once we identify improvements that need to be made or habits that need to be corrected, then I think our education piece is going to be multifaceted. It's not only going to be a web interface, but it's also going to be a physical, potentially a physical newsletter or pamphlet or whatever. I mean, I've seen many communities that have a multi-pronged approach, and I think that's something that we want to look at as a community. So certainly the website will have that all that content, but it can't be the only interface, because there are many people in town that don't use the internet.
Right.
So I think we have to have, certainly content will be on the website, but we also have to reach out to the community in other ways.
Right. We're in that, if Paula, we'll get to that part as well. It's just that I wanted to get us thinking in terms of what are we going to do about the website? It's dated. Some of the stuff is not necessarily.
And I will present some ideas at our next meeting.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, last week we talked about customer inputs, citizen inputs, and how do we follow up? And there's lots of different ideas. And, we talked about a tracking system. If somebody called up and said, hey, you're flooding my backyard, how do we deal with that? There was some, we talked about, I think it was Spring Street, where we had identified on the conservation side, where there was a storm drain, there was construction going on around it, there was not adequate protection. It was very close to a septic system that was being built out. I think I shared the pictures with you last time. And so there was a complaint. I passed it off to Matt, but we don't know what happened to it. Where did it go? And so we're talking about some sort of system that's going to track the issues. And you mentioned, Paula, that last time you'd installed a system, something similar to that.
Well, you're very aware of that, Jack.
Yeah,
I did there's something called a corrective active response system. And my question would be, is the town has purchased a permitting system. And I wonder if there is a complaint component to that could be added to the current online system that the town uses. And I don't know the answer to that. I actually am trying to get out of the computer business. So really I'm not interested in putting that together. But I think we need a system, a complaint tracking or corrective active response system that will track things like that, and not only associated with stormwater, but also, any complaint that comes into the town should have an ID number associated with it and a way to determine how it moved through the system and how and when it was resolved. But specifically with stormwater, I think it's important that we track. If you look at our older reports, if you go back to the 2007 reports, there were a number of outfalls that needed follow-up, or dry wells that needed drains that needed follow-up, that we're not quite sure what happened with that. Had we had a system such as this, we would be able to see from its identification that it was, 75% full, or that it couldn't be found, or that there may be dry weather flow. We'd know what happened with that throughout the system. And unfortunately, we've had a number of vendors in the stormwater realm that have changed. And unfortunately, a lot of that data and a lot of that insight has been lost. And so I think it's important that we create a system or purchase a system that will allow the tracking of that information and that data.
If I could add to that, Paul, in that last night, we had a contractor come to us, and basically this particular development was going to require a stormwater contract agreement from the town, a permit. And he had mentioned that, your commission, the planning board, had approved it. And I said, I asked him, I go, they approved this, huh? They approved a stormwater agreement, and he goes, well, I think so. And I go, well, basically the laws say that your board is the permitting authority, right? And everybody else has to say yes before you would issue it, right? Because you have, based on the town bylaw, you have to hear from everybody. And I'm thinking, this permitting system would help us know where we are, such that we could issue permits theoretically faster if all of a sudden we had some sort of electronic sign off that says, yeah, it was approved, and we wouldn't depend on that contractor to tell us what the status is with regard to various permits that have been approved.
Well, I think this is a question for Adam. Adam, I know that the online permitting system for, regular permits provides the opportunity for everybody to give comments. Is that applicable to stormwater?
It is. And
So we have that.
if we're talking about the one I think we're talking about, that the conservation agent was aware that the planning board had signed it, and the approval is posted online in the permit tracking software. And we did receive comments from conservation relative to riverfront and whatnot.
Okay, and so had they issued the permit, the stormwater permit?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
But the Conservation Commission had an opportunity to comment, and the status of it is available on the online system.
Right. We didn't approve it last night.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that, hey, we're dealing with a system that's evolving, and no one's throwing rocks at anybody or anything like that. It's just, this is where we are. And we hadn't approved it. And we were kind of surprised that he came back and said, yeah, I've had stormwater approval. And we read the law to him and basically said, no, yeah, the bylaw, before they issue, they have to have concurrence with us. And so that was kind of the surprise. And that's what caught me thinking about this whole permitting process being included. And if you've got something like that up there, is it open to the public, Adam, to view? Whatever your system's name is, what's the name of the system?
You're muted, Adam. You're muted, Adam.
I don't think we have the approvals posted to the public.
So this to me sounds like an exchange between planning and conservation, and I'm very interested in following this up on this and find out where the breakdown was. But I don't know that this is a stormwater task force issue. Certainly an issue that the departments need to. I'm interested to hear more about the reasoning behind conservation, and we'll go back and look at the meeting as well as read the bylaw that you're referring to. But definitely something we need to address.
Okay, I'll bring it. It's coming up shortly.
So,
Great. Okay, but what is the name of the system, by the way?
The permitting system,
Yeah,
it's Viewpoint Cloud.
Viewpoint Cloud.
My question on that, Adam, as far as the system is, does Viewpoint Cloud also offer a complaint or corrective active response module, and what the cost associated with that would be?
I don't have an answer to, I can look into it. I haven't done my notes
Okay.
to read.
Excellent. Okay, good. Okay. Central Mass Stormwater Coalition. Last time we talked, Adam, you and I were going to go chase it. I missed the last meeting because I wasn't here. But there's a tremendous amount of information coming out of there. And I still haven't done my minutes from the last meeting I attended. So have you made contact with them at all? Is there?
I didn't contact them. I do know that they're meeting, and they, again, as you said, they do send out a significant amount of information
Right.
regularly.
I'll volunteer to be the contact with that. I know Phyllis was before, and she went down to the meetings in Worcester when they used to have them. I would volunteer for that if you guys are okay with it, and I will start talking to the commission and stuff. But I just want to have your approval to say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's great, Jack.
Okay, I got it. Then, okay, structured stakeholder outreach consistent with the MS4 requirement. Okay, no person may undertake construction of activity following the effective date of the bylaw, including clearing, grading, excavation, and the results of the land disturbance will disturb equal or greater than 1 acre. The question becomes, now that people are less than 1 acre and they're changing their grades, we're going to have some, effect on stormwater. And I don't know, Paula, do you review any kind of grading under 1 acre?
Anytime there's any work that's greater than 1 acre, it requires a stormwater permit, and it
Right.
goes through the stormwater permit process through the planning board.
Right. But if it's less than 1 acre, you don't see it?
No,
No.
unless it directly associates with stormwater. For example, Adam, go ahead, you talk.
I think the answer is it depends, because we've seen plenty of site plan approval projects that are less than 1 acre. Site plan approval requires compliance with Mass DEP stormwater standards. So clearing and grading and alteration associated with projects that trigger site plan approval do get reviewed for stormwater. Also, Jack, as you know, projects that are within 100 feet of a wetland get reviewed for stormwater in a way through conservation.
Right,
So
200 feet. for experience.
There's a small delta of projects that are outside of both of those review processes that might not get looked at.
Mhm.
I guess my question to you, Adam, through you, Mr. Chair, is, do you know how small that delta is?
I don't. Quite frankly, it's in most instances, it's going to be individual homes, and it's going to be additions or yard alterations. Because the way the stormwater permit, the stormwater bylaw has been interpreted and implemented is, if someone comes in and applies for 5 A&R lots, that's considered a common development, so they get pulled into the stormwater process.
Mhm.
And that's easy to do because both processes are run through the planning board. And when someone shows up and says, oh, hey, look, I've got these 5 great lots, the planning board says, oh, don't forget, you have to do this other thing.
Right.
And I think at this point, we're probably rolling up towards a half dozen or more stormwater permits that we've seen specific to A&R developments.
Mhm.
So I think what we're going to find is the onesie twosie lots, the pre-existing non-conforming lots, I want to add, 1,000, 1,500 square foot addition to my house sort of things, where I have to clear, I have to regrade, I have to build a retaining wall. Those things are happening and they're not getting pulled into stormwater, and they potentially have the ability to introduce some change in flow.
Right, so we've had instances, Todd, you and I have seen them where the neighbors are complaining that someone's regraded and now they're flooding their property. And they think conservation has something to do with it where it's outside of our jurisdiction. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be good if they had to apply for some sort of permit through the planning board, but there's no real requirement they do that, is there?
No.
No. And so there's a little bit of a hole in our system there. The
It's
other-
also sort of a civil matter, and a lot of times that's going to be under the threshold that you put into place. I haven't seen stormwater permits that really govern disturbance less than 5,000. And 5,000 can be a little bit, but it can also be a lot depending on what someone's doing. As much as 500 square feet of disturbance could change the way water is shedding onto somebody's property.
Or out into the street.
Or out into the street.
Yeah,
But
and I think we've seen
Out into the
examples.
street's a separate issue because the town then has recourse because you're impacting the town.
Okay,
And if it's stormwater to a wetland, then that is conservation.
Right.
right.
If it's under, right now, as far as I know, if it's under an acre and doesn't trigger, as Adam talked about, the A&R process for site review, or it doesn't trigger A&R, us to be aware that it's a more than 5, or if it's someone coming in for a site review, then it could trigger stormwater, depending on because the requirements are that you can't shed more water off than you already, you can't shed more water off than post-construction than you did pre-construction. But other than that, I don't know what would trigger it. It might be interesting to see what other towns are doing. I know Tingsboro has a very extensive stormwater bylaw, and I'm happy to look into that. But I don't know, I'm not aware of any that don't have some sort of cutoff.
Okay,
I mean, theoretically, we'd be looking at any time anyone changes grade potentially. And I don't know how you would do that.
Well, and I don't want to get so restrictive that if someone plants a garden, they till the yard and plant a garden or something, that we're triggering a permit. I think,
Exactly.
I don't know how easy it would be to go back through, projects over the last few months, maybe 3 months or some period to try and get a sense, out of 40 projects or 50 projects or whatever it is, maybe, 1 or 2 may have triggered or didn't require any action with regard to stormwater of some sort, just to try and wrap our heads around whether this is even something to worry about.
right. Well, I can tell you that from personal experience, I have this wonderful neighbor that when I put my house in, I had changed the elevation to accommodate the septic system. And I didn't really know how the land rolled or anything like how it even worked. But my neighbor came over and pointed out that, look, you're going to put a pile of water on my house and potentially in my bedroom. And then I'm going, no, I don't want to do that. So then we put storm drains in to accommodate that. But it's only because I have such a wonderful neighbor that I did that. If I had a rat for a neighbor, hell of it, go swim, and so then it would be a big fight. So all I can tell you is that it does happen. And I'm not sure the best answer, maybe there's no answer, but all I do know is within that stormwater structure, the permit granting authority, PGA, under this bylaw shall be the Lunenburg Planning Board, right? And such permit shall be granted if the PGA determines in conjunction with Conservation Commission, Department of Public Works, Board of Health and Building Commissioner. So I'm assuming that means before that permit is issued, the planning board has confirmed with the other authorities identified that, yes, that is acceptable. And so, which leads into the other one, which is the enforcement. The building commissioner, in conjunction with the planning board, Conservation Commission, DPW, shall enforce this bylaw. And it's really not, when I can tell you that in some cases we've on conservation, Todd, we might have been dealing with stuff that was a violation, but we just took care of it. And I can tell you, I can tell you there's a farm that all of a sudden they built a little construction site on the side, and they were actually pulling off gravel and things like that, and it flooded one of our local ponds. Now, that's clearly a violation of stormwater, but we're handling it in the Conservation Commission. And I really think that we should have some way of notifying the planning board what's going on. And that's back to that whole system, that closed
So
loop.
what I'm hearing is the need for a workshop between the planning board, the Conservation Commission, and the DPW, and potentially the building official to talk about the stormwater process.
Yes,
That's what I'm hearing might be helpful.
I would agree with that, Paula. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Paul is right.
Yeah. Well, Matt's going to say that no matter what.
So why don't we schedule a workshop between the various departments associated with stormwater and try to open the channels of communication?
Okay. Adam, can you work that?
Yeah, I mean, are we talking both boards or are we talking staff?
Personally, I would like to have the boards involved, since I think the staff works well together. However, I think some of the board members may feel like they're being left out of the loop.
Yeah. And so if we could just if we need to expand it, Paula or Todd, if you think it needs to get bigger or it can get smaller, the more people we have, the harder it is to get dates that work.
Well,
You
know what?
Sorry, go ahead, Todd.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think we extend an invitation to the board. And then, whoever shows up, shows up.
Right.
So if people don't feel they need to participate or they have something else going on, so we don't have to try and get every board member at the meeting.
Right. And remember, they're stakeholders here. They're all
Right.
stakeholders. And the more we can do to bring the stakeholders up to speed in terms of what our group is trying to do, the better off we're going to be in the long run. And there won't be any surprises. And this is a particular case where we see the opportunity and we're going to grab it. The other part of it was that we should be thinking about the fact that we're incurring costs sometimes because of these activities, and we should be trying to recoup them. And so the question becomes, where does that recouped money go? Can it go back into the stormwater fund as a kind of a revolving account? Or does it have to go to the general fund? Or can we just tag it to go into DPW for right now? Because
That's a Heather question, but it's the creation of a revolving fund, which requires town meeting action, but Heather can chime in on that.
I think she's still.
You're asking about revolving funds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we find somebody on the, from the planning board or whatever group, can that money be used in our stormwater activities? Can we tag it for that? I'm just trying to find ways of starting to create little streams of money going into that group. That effort.
Yeah, so a revolving fund would have to have a specific purpose, revenue source, funds go in, and specific use of those funds going out.
Right.
That would, you have to.
I'm thinking it's going to cost Rob money no matter what. One way or another, it's going to cost you equipment, people, administrator, and things like that. That we need to find a way of funding that. So if we set up a revolving fund for those.
Well, when we say revolving,
About an
enterprise fund, yeah.
Which
So
also has to be established over time through town.
Okay. So there's a revenue source there. Okay, clicking along here. The status of drains and things like that. We actually got a lot of activity. Let me make this bigger so you can see this better a little bit here. I don't know if you can see it. But
Can you make it bigger, Jack?
I can do that again. Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now what is the status of our drains? Is there a common file with locations identified identifiable by the residents. Remember we talked about, we have files that look like this, but it just gives us a GPS, and we're going to take an activity to see if we can't at least put some street addresses on it.
Mhm.
And we never got an answer. This
Well,
last,
I think we haven't met since then,
Yeah, I was
so,
gonna say, you haven't asked for the answer yet.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
what's the
we may have the answer.
okay, what is the
I-
answer?
The answer is yes, we can do that. I spoke with Nick Christofori and I explained what the group was looking for. And he said that they could do that. They just have to, it'll just take a little bit of working it out. Not a problem.
That would be great. And then at the same time, that can become the basis for Rob's data system as he collects outfall information, right? We've already got the locations. And if we associate the street addresses and things, then all the other topics of information that you're collecting, we can load that up into one common base maybe, so we can go take a look at it.
So question, one of the things that came up at our last meeting was the system that's available through MRPC. And I don't know if Rob or Adam had an opportunity to follow up on that.
Adam and I have talked about it, and I got to make a contact at MRPC. It's an app. It's a data collection app that if when we're cleaning catch basins again, we able to outfit the truck with a tablet or some other device with GPS, we'll be able to collect that data and eventually, either provide it to our consultant or plug it into ArcGIS if we have that capability. So. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something they can provide. So it's just a matter of implementing it.
Okay.
So Rob, who owns it?
It's MRPC has basically have taken an app and
I mean,
created.
from this committee perspective, I think you own it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you own the site and giving it. Hey, so there's also within the MS4, there's a requirement in terms of employee training and procedures. Now, there was a document that Jack had published that showed the state of some of the storm drains and some sort of a description of where they were. So is that maintained now, or did that just all go away?
I'm not familiar with it. I haven't seen it.
Okay, let me try and find it for you and I'll send you the info.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. That's what he had presented to us. Okay, and the other question that we need to be thinking about, what are the replacement plans for some of the other older storm drains? Are we going to be able to detect how much we're going to have to do to upgrade those and how much it's going to cost and things? And where would you put that? Can that be part of this LinkedIn file or something?
I mean, if you're going to start forecasting lifespan of drains, there's other information other than just physical condition and location, age. There's a lot that factors into it. I mean, there's currently no replacement plans. It's more reactive than proactive. But that's not to say over time. I mean, I started to look at culverts, cross culverts under roads, but not necessarily catch basin to manhole piping, that, closed drainage networks. But I suppose there's probably a way to start looking at and using, if we have GIS information available, to start tying that in and using it for that.
Okay, so that's the kind of the direction we're going. And there's a question about the detention and retention pond maintenance. Now, and I've got a file a little bit later that'll show you how much we really have going on, or at least what we believed we had going on. But is the intention there to make that part of the plan? And are we doing any of that yet? That would be the question. And I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just saying, how are we going to reflect that?
I mean, currently CEI is doing annual inspections of the basins, and they're reporting that as part of the MS4 permit. Eventually, I mean, maintenance is going to be needed. That someone's going to have to get in there and clean them. So, that's all coming. And the DPW has to kind of figure out a way how we're going to do it.
Good, good. Okay.
So this type of data and this type of information is the kind of thing that's going to be critical to compile in order to make the argument if we do go to a sewer enterprise fund that's eventually going to be self-supporting, and we look at a sewer utility fee, for example, this kind of data is critical in making the argument for the reasoning behind establishing such an entity. So, you know, that's part of gathering the reasoning and the financial reason for creating this type of entity. So, you know, the fact that we're going to start capturing that data and start tracking it, and it really all goes back to the record keeping. And I think, you know, we're hearing from Rob that more and more of that is happening, and certainly adding the locations, the consultant adding the locations of all the various systems is going to be helpful. Because that way we can go back to the older plans that we've paid for and done over the years and sort of try to keep track of the status of all of these different sites. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
We are, Paul. I mean, you hit on the big point here is that all of a sudden we're asking Rob to collect a lot of data and manipulate a lot of data. And do, hopefully it's do some analysis along that line. At what point, if we don't have we don't have the structure in place, the full structure to go out and ask the town to start sending us extra money, how are we going to afford to have that extra person start working on this data and data analysis? And I think that's a question for Rob and Heather, to you guys to mush around.
Well, I think at that point, Jeff, we probably rely on our consultants.
Okay. To build the base and maintain it?
Perhaps.
You outsource the whole thing? Yeah, it's possible. Sometimes it's cheaper to outsource it.
But the key is to retain ownership of it, so that we end up with that data system at the end, so that it's not kept at a consultant's office, which I know it has in the past. So for example, Earth Tech years ago has a ton of data on the town of Lunenburg, but unfortunately the town of Lunenburg doesn't have all of that data. So whatever relationship we have with the contract, I hope it includes the caveat that, you know, all data at the conclusion of a contract is forwarded for the ownership of the town of Lunenburg. I think that's critical.
Yeah. Do we
That
know-
is, I can say that is part of our contract.
Great.
Is it-
Ownership of
Are the
data.
other towns outsourcing it, Heather?
I'm not
Data
sure.
management?
I
But
think
I
a
know
lot
I-
of towns are.
Yeah, I can say we don't have, I think Rob's suggestion is correct in that we don't have the manpower to do it in-house, that outsourcing it would be our best model.
Right. I think everybody in town understands you're really, really busy, no matter what. Then no one's doing that. So here was something that we got, this is a few years back, and with regard to just plain outfalls. And our team looked at the various outfalls associated with the lakes area. And I know in the last meeting, someone indicated that Lake Shirley was the one that needed the most help. And as we went through and analyzed the various functions of what was happening in the lakes, and I have a little more data on this in the classifications, it was determined that Hickory Hills actually had the greatest number of outfalls that we were aware of at the time going into the lake. At the same time, we also realized that the watershed is only 7.5 miles, and versus something like Lake Shirley, it's 25 miles. So the amount of water that actually goes through Hickory Hills, available water, is potentially less. And in the meantime, we looked at the outflows that were going in and saying, and then we looked at different locations, and that's what caused us to apply for a grant further up the Mulpus. I just wanted to dispel the belief that Lake Shirley it was in trouble, and Hickory Hills is dealing with actually more and has the greatest vulnerability with regard to things like phosphorus and such.
On that subject, I was supposed to reach out to Lake Shirley, and I'll be honest, I haven't done that yet, but I certainly will. We had talked about creating, you know, getting stakeholders involved, and I certainly think Lake Shirley is a stakeholder that should be involved. And I will reach out to them. But there is data on Hickory Hills, and we're currently doing our own stormwater testing. We have a stormwater committee and a stormwater testing team that is doing stormwater testing, and we'll certainly share that data as it's collected with this group. But I did send out some links to information on the ESS report that we recently had done. Hopefully that was circulated to everybody. Adam, you were going to send that out?
I did not send it out. I don't remember seeing it.
Okay, I had sent it to you quite a while ago, but I'll just resend it.
Okay, yeah,
But it
and I'll
just has
send it out
some
first thing.
links to, it has some links to some information that ESS found about high phosphorus and high nitrate content.
Right. Okay, moving along. That was none.
And I think the answer was that the information that was identified as troubled waters came from the state, and Hickory Hills is not currently identified as a troubled water. So that was why Lake Shirley was listed in the MS4 report. At least that's my recollection.
Yeah, it comes from the state's impaired waters list, and that doesn't include private lakes.
Right.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Also, the thing of it is, they gave them a class 5, and and Hickory Hills is a class 4. If you were to look at what causes it to go into a class 5, turbidity is a big issue. Oxygenation is a big issue, which is also a function of how many weeds you try, how many plants you're killing and you're leaving to produce the oxygen. So there are some very controllable variables, but both of us suffer from the heavy metals side of it, which puts us, Shirley and ourselves at class 4 in that regard. And it's the turbidity and it's the shallowness and all the boats with the big horsepowers that are continually turning it up and driving the turbidity in the wrong direction.
But
So-
I think the key in whether or not, we include Hickory Hills in our reports going forward in our MS4 management. I think certainly, sharing the information that we do have currently with our consultant, regardless of whether it's on the state list or if it's a private lake, it's certainly being impaired by stormwater. And I know, Rob has been involved in some of the recent cleaning of various plunge pools. The Hickory Hills put in a number of plunge pools and continues to do so to try to trap the sediment from stormwater that's coming into the lake, because there are so many outfalls directly into the lake. But that's information that certainly I think the consultant would find interesting, and I'll send out some of those links.
It's the 303D list is what it's called, and the most recent one is from 2018.
Right.
And it doesn't cover private water bodies, which is why Lake Shirley is the only one mentioned, and where that document was done as a component of the MS4 in order to do compliance. I don't think the intent is that Hickory Hills is irrelevant, but that it wasn't necessary for compliance. So any planning around phosphorus removal would be concentrated on Lake Shirley, because that's where the requirements lie, and with limited funding, that would make the most sense.
But this is where I have an issue with the goal of the Stormwater Committee. If you read our mission statement, it is to protect the water bodies, regardless of whether it's private, regardless of whether it's public. And our goal should not strictly be compliance. Our goal should be to ensure that the water bodies in Lunenburg, whether they be private, whether they be public, whether they be recreational use, whether they're a pond, that we as a committee and as a town are taking responsibility to ensure that we're protecting them as best as we can be. And so that's one of my issues with the MS4 permitting process, because I've talked to Jack a number of times about, compliance should not be our only goal. Certainly it is a goal, but we need to go beyond that, because Lunenburg has so many streams and water bodies and wetlands that may not be, public water bodies on that list, but they certainly need to be protected, which is directly in line with our mission statement.
Right. And the state owns all the water anyway. So, okay. So the question is, we're talking, it was clear from all the input that we all need money to come in. We need energy to move, make the stuff move. And in fact, that was the number one most common comment. But so how do we get this money? And we're looking at grants and taxes and such. But one of the things that keeps popping up is this grant money is out there. And I know that Paula and Adam, you were working on some grants. Or where do we get a list? I'll give a call to the Central Mass to see if they have a master list of grants available.
But I think we're a long way from a grant application right now, Jack.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there are grants, but first we have to identify what a project is that we're doing. We have to have a specific, we're actually in the process of writing a recreational trails grant right now. The club that I belong to is, but you have to have a specific project, you have to have a specific goal, you have to identify the cost. So we can't, to look for grants right now doesn't make a lot of sense unless we know what it is that we need. And I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. Well, okay. Paula, I'll give you some input. That was 2-3 years ago, we actually applied for a grant, and the Stormwater group, in conjunction with our consultants. And it was essentially to put some receivers and things into the Mulpus and veins and such. We didn't get it. And Adam, you had a chance to see it, I believe.
You're muted again, Adam.
The 319 grant?
Yeah, the 319 grant. We didn't get it, but it was the first year that we'd applied, and we never followed through again.
It wasn't the first year we'd applied. It was the first year that they had a category called the Healthy Watersheds Protection. And we applied under the Healthy Watershed. And then they told us that we hadn't adequately proven that the watershed we were looking to do the work in was a healthy watershed. And I know our consultant at the time disagreed with that. Those grants are usually really competitive. There's a significant match that goes along with them. And they're usually very project dependent. So I think what Paul is saying makes a lot of sense. And I know that she had mentioned that Hickory Hills has formed a nonprofit, which would allow them to partner with the town. We talked about the potential of looking at MVP funding for bank stabilization and erosion control on the upper Mulpus prior to Hickory Hills, which is a great project, but we need a significant amount of detail and planning in order to have the level of submission that the MVP program would want for their project. We've looked at a couple of projects that were happening in town, and I've spoken to our MVP rep about them. And essentially, the issue being, and Flat Hill Road, the drainage issue out there is one of those. It's exacerbated somewhat by climate change, but you can't directly tie the causes to climatological change, and the solutions need to also involve a significant amount of nature-based and future-proofing. So they're really hitting a very narrow alley of projects and issues that you're getting to address, or at least components in much larger projects. And what I've seen, a lot of MVP funding has gone and been a component of multi-grant projects that are addressing much larger issues in denser areas.
But there are certainly grant opportunities.
There are,
But
yes.
There are absolutely grant opportunities that I think are going to be worthwhile applying for. But first we have to identify those projects. You have to create a great deal of background information to put together any grant application. So before we talk about, who owns obtaining grants, first we have to identify the problems and what we need a grant for. So, Adam just mentioned Mulpus Road, Flat Hill Road. We talked about the Mulpus Inlet, and certainly there is a lot of data about the Mulpus Inlet, but what is it that we intend to do there? And what's the problem that we're trying to address, and what's the fix that we want to implement? Those are all things that have to be identified regardless of the location. But then once you identify the need, then you can start looking for grants, and there are many of them available, but they're very targeted for the type of project that they're targeted for. So while I think it's a great, goal is to really get into grant writing, and I'm happy to help with that. I've written several grants and fortunately been funded for them. But we need to first identify the real problems that we need to fix.
Paula,
Mm-hmm.
if I could suggest that essentially there's two parts to this. There's the identified need, and then there's kind of like what is out there and it's available. And normally what we do is we'd set up a clearinghouse that it could identify all the potential sources and finding who they are and what are they putting out there. And then we come back and we create that clearinghouse. And then we try to simultaneously mate that up with what we have for the needs. And then we look at what is it going to take to deliver it? Is it like John and I spending a year and a half writing to DEP and trying to get approval for the siphons? Is that worth it? That kind of a thing. But I think that to at least figure out what's out there, we might allow us some easy wins that will cause some sort of incremental improvement.
Well, I'm happy to put together a simple list of some grants that are available specifically for stormwater. They
Okay.
change year to year. The financing changes, the availability changes, but I can certainly look at what's available now and put that together for the next meeting.
Is there more than one source for grants?
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm saying that we start canvassing them, and I'm sure that our friends at Central Mass are collecting stuff too, and I know they are. I know they're so. If I can be a stakeholder and helper in that, I would certainly volunteer, and then I'm going to volunteer John to do all the hard work.
I'm actually happy to help with writing of grants if we get to that
Yeah,
point.
right.
I've written many.
Yeah, now John's really good at going out in waders and going in the middle of streams.
Getting the data collection would be great.
Data collection and falling down in it, nearly drowning. Yeah, that kind of stuff. John's good at that.
The day I fell on my backside in the stream and Jack had a heart attack, I thought I drowned.
Yeah. I was coming down the stream real fast to help get him out, but that was fun. Okay, so if we can create some sort of a clearinghouse that we can, in your it, Paul, and we'll all keep looking for what might be available out there from different sources. Okay, this current stormwater funds determine the information made available and tracked. We will need, if stormwater is considered, okay, never mind that. If we just did that.
One question before you keep going.
Mhm.
Does the Stormwater Task Force have an area on the town's cloud that is dedicated to stormwater that information can be deposited in?
Google kind of cloud.
Well, typically, for example, Hickory Hills has a drive that all the files are placed in a Hickory Hills drive, and the ownership is handed over to Hickory Hills. Does the town have anything like that? I know conservation talks all the time about the cloud, the information in the cloud. Is there a drive dedicated to stormwater?
There is a small corner of the server in the Ritter building for stormwater. The town is in the process of moving to Microsoft 365 and OneDrives. My understanding, and Heather, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that each committee will have a OneDrive that they can dump their data into. So there'll be one coming. I'm gonna do this and say next couple of months, because I think some of our IT infrastructure is limping along as it is, but the plan is to have something that is available to store that type of data. We do have something now. It's limited what's on there, and it's really just part of what's in the planning server.
Okay, all right, so, definitely that's gonna be important and hopefully that happens soon, is to come up with a repository for this information, because unfortunately stuff gets lost as people change, as committees
Mhm.
change, and I think that's what hopefully this will avoid. But glad to hear it's coming. In the meantime, I think, Adam, you're it
Hey, Paula,
for holding
Hopefully
data.
my brain doesn't reset on me.
I have about 5 years worth of data, different
Mhm.
reports and things like that is sitting on my machines.
Why don't you
And
put them on a Google Drive and make it shareable?
I could do something like that. Right now it's just sitting in my own personal drive. It's I give it funny names and things like that, but I could certainly build a landscape or something, a map.
Well, I think you're probably the longest consistent member of this committee, and we wouldn't want to lose that data. So even if you
Yeah.
put it on your own, create a drive on Google now and share it to various people. And then once the online town system comes online, it could be deposited in there, but we just don't, and maybe make Adam the administrator or something, but we need to start capturing all this work.
Right. It's
So-
there.
Paula, for your information, the
Mhm.
Conservation Commission, much like the select board, has many files that they put on a Google Drive now. But if the implementation of Microsoft 365 is not far off, I don't think it's worth going through the hassle of setting up a Google Drive if it's going to be implemented shortly. Because I can tell you, personally, I work on through Microsoft 365 at work, and it's very similar to Google, but I think it's a little more user friendly and easily integrated into your laptops and things like that.
My only concern is none of us are immortal, and I hate to say that.
Right, right.
But I don't want to lose anything in the meantime.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and right now I'm not aware of any place where all this stuff resides. So that's my concern. And I agree with you completely. I think, hopefully if the town goes to 365 and in the near future, that's awesome. But my concern is just in the meantime. Unfortunately, we all know wheels of progress turn sometimes very slowly.
Or not at all, if they aren't given energy. Okay, but I need to clean some of the stuff up. I was thinking that I was going to start sending that out to you guys, some of the stuff that happened in the past.
Well, that's fine too. And maybe,
Yeah, we use
Adam can
distributor
store it
approach.
somewhere right now and
Yeah, if you get it to me, I'll put it up on the server with everything else, which will
then it will be backed up.
migrated. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my Google backs up, but I'm getting pretty full there. Okay, so stormwater funds determined. How are the current stormwater funds determined and meaning allocated? Rob goes in and on bended knee and begs for more money.
Well, no,
And-
one of the things we talked about last meeting was Rob starting to identify and creating a workflow to track work associated with stormwater. And Rob, I don't know if you've made any progress in that.
Unfortunately, with the storms and stuff, I haven't had a lot of time. So I haven't, but it's definitely on my radar. I just went through budgeting and so, but yeah, no, you're right. We've got to start tracking stuff to have an idea of where it's going and how we're spending it
Right.
and what
So
we're
that's-
asking for in the future for a utility.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And you got to talk about, include your current administration costs, your future, whether materials, equipment costs, buildings. And if we're going to ask them, for the town people, for a utility, we've got to give them a lot of information that allows them to see and feel comfortable. And that would include some of the metrics that we're about ready to talk about. And the other part of it is Heather brought up a really good point. Not that she doesn't bring up a lot of them all the time, but there's going to be an emergency. We're going to have some sort of accrual, building accrual to deal with the unplanned emergency that's dealt with it, and that needs to be part of our thinking and planning. And so the other side of it is last time we talked about the stormwater utility will become a separate function under DPW. Is that the intent at this point? Is that what we're thinking, Heather, or? And how do you make that a separate account? Is
I
that-
would say, yes, that would still be the intent. But that's creating a enterprise similar to sewer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The sewer, like on where the sewer that handles our flushing activities, or the sewer that handles the stormwater?
No, the sewer enterprise fund is
Sewer
the sewer,
enterprise,
is
right.
this, yeah, so it
Yeah.
would be similar to the sewer enterprise fund.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be a self-supporting entity, basically.
So that would become part of the DPW function. Okay. Can stormwater fines be diverted to stormwater utility fund? That's kind of repeat. I jumped on the earlier one. And I think the answer is we'll take a look. Is that fair, Heather?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Try to keep an eye on the time. Where am I? Okay, 8:22. Okay, there are MS4 requirements. Who owns the components of each one of these elements? And there's a ton of them in there. And Rob, you've given some pieces of it. And should we the question becomes, I gotta say this, trust but verify. And I know you're signing them. And I know Rob is producing some stuff. But normally most operations have some sort of a review process that assures the timeliness of the data and the active costs. And so, and there's always gaps and there's always surprises. And if we're trying to continually move ahead, what kind of an audit function are we really performing on our annual performance report? And what about the other stuff that we're looking at adding? And the intent would be to make this available such that the town employee, the town citizens could look to see how their money is being spent and where it's going. But they would ask, is this real, or is this just somebody pulling my leg and they're going to retire and they're not going to care about it? Should we be auditing this stuff? And then the question is, should be there graphs associated with each one of those pieces versus a simple yes or no? Are we going to give them a score?
I don't know where you're going with this, Jack.
Okay, we've
Yeah,
got.
Jack, I mean, in my view, when we get our annual permits, it seems to me our consultants kind of tell us how they think we did that year in complying with the permit and kind of give us areas where we may be able to improve and not in areas where we satisfy the requirements. So I don't know, having someone within the town administration or on the task force do it again makes a lot of sense to me.
I would agree with Todd.
Me
Okay,
too.
right
Me too.
now we're operating in a pass-fail mode, right? We don't all we know is we're passing, and I'm not so sure in some of the, are we giving ourselves a little extra credit? If you want to get better, you go beyond a pass-fail. And does it meet the required outputs? And how do you measure those outputs? How do you confirm them? And so, in my part of the world is we always came up with some sort of a numerical analysis that allowed us to tell us where we are within the control limits. Are we exceeding them, and to what degree? And if we're way exceeding them, can we pull them back and spend less money on this, or what? How are we doing? And I just think that the pass-fail approach is not conducive to making continuous improvement and being smart about how you're spending the money. So all I know is that we've got. I'm just going to hit the last one: catch basin cleaning and the good housekeeping piece. We have to. Yeah, we've got 640 outflows. I'm just throwing that number out there. And how many of them are being cleaned? And if we have a percentage of that, and theoretically it's, we have some that get cleaned every other year and other them get 100%.
Let
And the
me,
last,
let me throw out a different approach, Jack. I
Okay,
understand
sure.
what you're saying, but what if we went with a different approach? What if we, as a committee, set some measurable goals or objectives that we want to achieve over a
Mhm.
period of time, and then measure ourselves as a committee in, obviously the consultant is a piece of that. But for example, if you look at the information I sent prior to the last meeting, I outlined how many catch basins we have, how many were cleaned, how many out, I put that all in the memo
Right.
or the notes that I did. If one of the committee's goals, and this is an if, in my opinion, when you start a year, you should have goals and objectives of what you want to accomplish. And you've just set out a couple that I think are pretty big: identifying a grant clearinghouse, identifying the website, identifying for DPW to start tracking, implementing a system to start tracking the time associated with stormwater. If we want to quantify those type of goals, and if you want to include catch basin cleaning, achieve, 20% cleaning or whatever, then I think maybe at the end of the year, you then measure on those goals. Is that what you're really trying to
Well-
to target?
For sure, no matter what, yes, whatever, we're gonna have probably 50 things we want to do. And we've got to, once we understand our current state, we get a chance to determine what are the really important things, like catch basin cleaning, that, yeah, we want to know about that. Because then we're going to devote some of our energy to figuring out how to do that. So if all of a sudden catch basin cleaning is one of our critical measures, then we need to make sure that those in fact are being, the measure that we're receiving is legitimate, not because somebody's trying to hose us, because maybe a component is missing or something is not tracking appropriately and it's not being looked at. So that's the kind of auditing I'm talking about, and verifying and trusting the number is going to tell us something, but we need to do a quick sample. And you don't have to look at 100%. I mean, I look at 15 points, and if I have a pretty good idea, I get to 30 points and I get a higher confidence level. So that's the kind of thing I'm just confirming the numbers versus, yeah, we're passing. That's to me not an acceptable piece.
Well, and I agree with you. I mean, again, it goes back to the whole compliance thing, but I think that as a committee, if there are certain goals or objectives that we want to achieve, why don't we identify those and identify what our target is, and then measure where we're at from that? Like you said, we can't do all of these in 1 year,
Right.
but maybe the first year you pick, these are our 10 objectives, these are our goals, and then see where we are at the end of the year. How much of that did we accomplish? Did we hit our target?
Right.
And
so what I want to do, Paula, is essentially we're collecting and reporting those, and it might turn out that we should go take a look at those that we're collecting, and that will become part of our priority list. It's just that we need to, in this case, number of catch basins, 121, number of catch basins cleaned. I think that number may be a little bit light. It's a number of catch basins inspected. It doesn't tell me how many catch basins. Is there total number of catch basins? 955. So we see how we're doing. Are we adding more? How is the cleaning going? What are we finding? And somehow analyze that if that's what we're going to end up with, and just confirm that back. And so I'm looking for analysis as well as the number. And I want to just do a sanity check on that piece. But again, we're just collecting data, and I'm not trying to solve that problem. It's just I want to potentially, this becomes.
Can I suggest at the next meeting, we put goals and objectives for the committee on our agenda, and maybe we can identify specific things we want to work on this year? We
can talk about certainly that, but I just want to get as much on the table as we can. And I think we're close to it here. I don't know. I'm discovering more stuff. Let me finish that, Paula, but I agree with you.
Okay.
That
Okay.
agenda, because we're going to add that on there. Okay. Public awareness. We're depending on Todd to be the representative speaker for the selectmen. And I think, Todd, you agreed to that, right?
Yep.
Good man. Okay, so, and then there's other ways of creating awareness. I'm not trying to say anything, but we need to go back and look at what some of our other stakeholders are speaking to. And the interesting thing about it, there was what's the name of the town? I'm sorry, I'm having a senior moment here. But
Ashland.
Ashland, thank you. You know, they've done something similar, and they identify the key stakeholders, their positions. We actually did a survey of the population at one of the town meetings, you know, 5 years ago. And we've got to be ready for their reservations, and we've got to sell the benefits, and then we need to find opinion leaders. So when we're creating this public awareness, we need to make sure we're getting to all our stakeholders, and we need to start figuring that piece out. So there's an example of a town that successfully pulled off setting up a stormwater fund, starting a stormwater committee. And I think that we might want to take a look at that. In fact, I'm going to send you the presentation from them. Now,
Yeah, there's many that have
Oh, yeah.
done this across the state.
right, I've only seen, but I've only seen.
Yeah, I sent out a list, and it's a much longer list now, but in
Oh.
my notes that I sent to you guys when I started, my comments is a whole list of them.
Right, and if there's any other sources or if they've created any examples of how they pulled it off, we might want to benchmark that and see how we're doing in comparison. And
We've got a long way to go.
I know
I also think it's
years, a few years.
it's so specific to the community.
Mhm.
How you do it, how you get people to support it is going to be different in Ashland. Than it is in Reading, than it is in Northampton, than it is anywhere else. You can look at what they've done. You can take notes on what they've done and some of the approaches, but how it gets sold to the individuals is going to be so dependent on the individuals, and people in Lunenburg are different than people in other towns, and what they care about and how they look at it is going to be local specific.
But there are key elements in all of them. I actually went to a seminar, and this was years ago now, on stormwater and the establishment of a utility or enterprise fund. And the biggest takeaway from that meeting was the establishment of the need, which is where we are. Until we can establish a need, we're a long way off, and we're not close to establishing a need first. First, we have to identify the deficiencies in our stormwater, our existing deficiencies, the need for improvement. We have to identify the costs. We have to identify the impacts of stormwater. So there's a lot of data collection that we have to do before we even get close to establishing an enterprise fund.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. So anyway, Paul, I just kind of, in terms of some of the data that we might want to make public, in this case, like we talked about this with regard to the classification of the lakes. Both Lake Shirley and ourselves are 4A, but they hit 5 because of turbidity, dissolved oxygen, excessive algae. That's the shallow of the pond. So do they?
Right. Well, and that might change now, because we've now had to treat Hickory Hills with copper sulfate because of ongoing algae issues.
Right.
So evaluating, continuing to change, to verify that category is going to be important.
Right. So we've come a long way. Back in 2020, William to Jack, we didn't have that many truly identified and being measured. And for that matter, by the way, Rob, I believe that the consultants or yourself are starting to identify the deficiencies associated with an outflow?
Yeah, that was all done by our consultant, that
Right.
CEI.
So how do we copy that, and such that when our folks go out and do an inspection, that kind of data comes out?
When who's going out and doing these
Well,
inspections?
okay, we have our people that are putting the clam down in, right? Pulling it out. Is the intent to have?
So outfalls are different than catch basins, Jack.
Okay, I'm
Outfall-
sorry. I'm just using that as I believe these are all catch basins here. If I use the word outfall, I made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, that BMP inspection result, that's just as I'm reading it, it looks like it's probably one of the basins at one of the.
Catch basin.
Yeah, it is.
No.
You've got a whole file of them out there. You got about 20 or 25 of them. Or he did in his report back when?
No, so this is a detention basin. Just
Okay,
looking at the major deficiencies, a lot of leaf debris and some sediment buildup on bottom, signs of yard waste dumping, standing water throughout. So we just, I know it's easy to get the terms intertwined. So the outfalls have already all been inspected, and Adam can correct me if I'm wrong. I think at some point they go back for testing, for, you know, taking samples and things like that. The catch basin cleaning, that's not part, I mean, the catch basins aren't really within their purview for the MS4 stuff. So they're different animals.
Okay,
wait, can you go back to that? Why are the catch basins different? The catch basins lead to an outfall.
Right, and so we're tracking the, you know, the catch basins, that how many we're cleaning, what we're taking out of them, you know, what amount. That's all reported in the permit. I don't know why they're separate in the reporting in terms of, you know, what they're looking for in our yearly report.
Because in the, I'm very curious, because the previous two reports that I've looked at clearly outline, you know, more than 75% full, you know, and they looked at every catch basin, needs follow-up, dry weather flow. So I'm a little bit confused about how this company's going about it versus the prior companies.
So catch basins and outfalls are different under the permit. Outfalls are not every catch basin goes to an outfall.
Right,
The outfalls are where the water's being discharged.
yeah,
So the dry weather screening identifies whether or not there is flow. If there's
right,
flow, there's testing. If the testing shows that it's not an illicit discharge, that it might be groundwater or seepage, they will go back and retest and reinvestigate the outfall. If the testing shows that it's potentially an illicit discharge, then the IDDE plan has a procedure for tracking where that discharge comes by essentially following it upstream.
right.
The
But
catch
the
basins-
catch basins,
They're
the
treated
cat,
differently
go ahead, I'm
because
sorry.
they're the inflow.
Right,
They're the start of it. And I think, and again, I'm trying to get into the mind of engineers and scientists, which is a weird space for me to be, but I think when you get to the EPA and the DEP level, they're looking at it as most people have started moving to sumps and catch basins. So they're a control point where that sediment should be stopping in most instances, and there should be hoods. So attacking those differently and making sure that the entry into the system is managed differently than the outflow helps keep this.
I
don't know,
I totally understand what you're saying, but if you go back to the first stormwater report that we had to do under the MS4, they looked at all of the,
2003.
yes, they looked at all of the catch basins as well as all of the outfalls.
Mhm.
And any catch basin that had sediment more than half full, obviously, if your sediment goes above the outlet pipe, you've got a problem, because now you're not only, you're not
Yes.
capturing the sediment's being washed down.
Yes.
So the catch basin is a critical component of any stormwater system.
Mhm.
Because if those catch basins aren't maintained and kept in, you know, good condition, then your whole system is going to fail. So, because if your sediment levels aren't being maintained, or if there's a hole within the bottom, or if it's not capturing the sediment, there's an issue. So I know in the 2003 report, and subsequently, I think it was I have both reports and I have detailed notes about both of them, but they were looking at catch basins. Am I hearing now that they're not?
No, they are. It's just looked at differently.
Okay,
It's not looking at them. That's done through Rob, through the catch basin operations plan, or I'm not sure what exactly it's called. And the permit from 2003 and the permit from 2017 are different, and they've changed they do it. It used to be you had to clean every catch basin at least once a year, I think is what the 2003 permit said. And 2017 says you have to come up with this operational plan for cleaning catch basins that results in you not having a catch basin that is more than 50% full.
Right, because some catch basins
baseline-
might have to be cleaned every year, some might not have to be cleaned for 5 years, depending on
Correct,
the.
and I think that's what Rob was sort of outlining at the last meeting is there's a 2 or 3 year process of trying to clean as many catch basins as you can to identify how much sediment loading they're getting annually, so you can then dial in your annual maintenance to be as efficient as possible and manage cleaning the ones that are the most full regularly and going back on a less regular schedule to the ones that don't need it.
So I guess I'd like to understand the process better. I'd like to understand what our consultant is doing. I'd like to understand, what they're doing. Are they going out and looking at systems? Are they doing testing? What is it that they're doing? I haven't seen the contract. I'd be very interested to see the contract. And what is our responsibility that what we're doing? I know one of the questions that I had in my comments, and I don't have them right here, is I was shocked at the minimal number of catch basins that were cleaned. So, I'd like to understand that piece, because if you go back to the 2003 report and then the subsequent report, the need for cleaning was clearly evident. So I'm curious where we are with that. And I know Rob is recently new to the job and overwhelmed with all of the stuff that he's got to do, but I'd like to understand what our process is, and what the consultant's doing versus what the town is doing. What is our program?
We can find that out.
Yeah, Adam, Nick recently sent out his upcoming, kind of schedule of tasks. We can share that with them with his scope. Specifically, Paula, the catch basin issue, and I understand what you're getting, and I agree. They're in the first line of defense for our stormwater system and stormwater treatment. I'm starting at zero data here, and so
Right.
part of the task under the permit is to develop this operational plan for catch basin cleaning. So it's going to take time, unfortunately, and we did more than was done last year this summer. It wasn't as much as I had wanted to get done, so it's going to take some time, unfortunately.
So I guess I just
and I can't tell you how long it's going to take to get to an operational plan where I know there's parts of town that receive more sediment just because of the watershed, the size of it. It's going to take time to identify all of that. And right now I have some institutional knowledge from my crew, but the way they went about cleaning in the past didn't lend itself towards developing this plan. They went about it in a way that didn't take any of that into account. It was just, let's get what's closest to the lakes because that's important, and then we'll work our way out. So there were parts of town that may be receiving lots of flow where they weren't necessarily cleaning it until they realized, oh, that catch basin's full, so we gotta do it. So I'm kind of got my hands tied a little bit in terms of what I can give you and how long it's going to take.
Look, I just opened my notes while we were talking. In 2020, we have 955 catch basins. Only 79 of those are cleaned. So, and when were they last cleaned? Or, out of 955, 79 to me seems like a very, very low number. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that in 2019, maybe they cleaned 300, but if there's any way to capture that kind of data, but I'd be interested to know, is your priority the lakes first and then move out? Is it, what's your target goal? I think we have to start putting some metrics to things as a community so that we can, if we ever want to get to a point where we can justify the establishment of an enterprise fund, we have to have metrics. We have to know what it is that we're accomplishing and what it is that we're not accomplishing due to either lack of manpower or lack of finances. And right now we have no justification to make that argument.
And Paula, if I could add that,
Yeah,
you're talking about, you're doing qualitative metrics right now, just the 79 or the
yeah,
955. You're not doing qualitative, meaning that what I'm showing here is the deficiencies and what are we seeing and things like that. So there's another level of data that we want to be collecting as well that allow us to see how effective, if we're doing 79, what do they look like? What did we see? Are we doing
Right,
stuff that we
right.
don't need to be doing? So, and that's what we're trying to get to,
Right,
that
right.
we want both sides of data. Okay, I'm trying to make sure we get out of here in time. And so,
Hey, Jack, before you get off
yeah,
that topic, I agree with what Paul is saying, completely. There's a disconnect between what we're doing and what we need to do, and we got to find a way to get there. One of the things I'd be interested is if we have a scope of work that's going to be executed by our stormwater consultant. Could you share that with us so the task force could have an understanding of what they're doing, and that gives us the information so we kind of understand what they're doing, and can help us think about what they're doing and what we're doing in town, and that's would be useful to me.
Yeah, we can get that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, moving on to number 15. We kind of talked about, do we want to establish any kind of workshops right now, or is it just too early?
Well, we just did. We said we're going to do a workshop between the planning board, the conservation, and the
That's one of them.
DP
Yeah.
for
But
the
I don't know that that's
permitting.
a stormwater task force workshop.
Right, that's a regulatory
I
workshop.
mean, I think we're getting a lot of mission creep here on what the task force is doing. And I know it's all peripherally related to stormwater, but it seems really nebulous.
I'd like a workshop, honestly, with the consultant. Not necessarily right now, but once we get that scope of work, I'd like to understand what it is that they're doing for us. And then I'd also like to understand, and Rob, I absolutely know it's going to take some time because you've jumped into this and you've got a lot to do. But one of the things you talked about at the last meeting, I believe, was the establishment of some sort of worksheet so that when people go out to do the catch basin cleaning, they are identifying the status and what they're finding, and maybe that's something we can talk about, or maybe we can help work on. I guess I'm looking for ways that we can help you.
Yeah, no, and we do that now. They take information but it's all on paper. Part of the MRPC app that I'm gonna hopefully use this coming season will, digitize all that information. And it's a preset form with drop downs on, say condition, the inlet, and they're gonna gather information, and it will hopefully be a lot quicker than, taking notes on a paper form. And so, yeah, I mean, we're doing that now. It's just, for me, it's operationally what they've been cleaning versus what we need to be looking at, and in order to determine, the best approach to town-wide cleaning all the catch basins. So that's where it's lacking for me, is there's no real good course of action to cleaning them. So what they have done, they start at the lakes and work their way out, because that's just what they've always done. So I'm going to have to come up with a plan to, maybe next year we have to hit different areas of town that I suspect, has a larger watershed with a greater potential for sediment, migration into the system, where there is a system, and then hit it that way. And, we might start seeing different information right away. We're realizing, while we were concentrating on the lakes for a good reason, perhaps operationally it's not necessary. So those are the types of things I need to look at. We are capturing some other information on them when we do.
Rob,
Yeah.
if I could ask, I really believe that the people doing the work know the most about it every time. And you're the guy that's doing most of this work. Would it make sense for you to kind of put together a list of things that you would like to have, like to focus on, and have us help you as much as we can on that list, and incorporate it in some of the other things? But give us a list of things that you think will have the best benefit to this overall, the overall system, the MS4 system.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly think about that. I think what I've heard tonight so far is I like that the committee would like to be looking at, grant fund opportunity, other funding opportunities. Because when I think about that, you know, I don't have a lot of time for it. That's a perfect type of thing. But yeah, no, I'll think about that, and any help is
Because
appreciated.
you're the guy that's you know, you're doing a wonderful job. It's a really hard job. I know all you guys are busier than all hell. And you're going to require some energy, whether we can get it from the outside or whether it's funding or whatever, but tell us what you could, you know, what you can come up with. And I'm sure Matt will be glad to loan you his backhoe. And
I don't know about that, Jack.
I don't know, probably not.
Rob,
No.
Rob,
But he's
Rob,
willing to lend out his truck. He does that all the time now.
Yeah,
apparently.
I heard about that. Went for a nice joyride.
Yeah, that's right.
Rob, if you have worksheets that they've been collecting over the years and can provide me with copies, I would be happy to put them in a spreadsheet.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do the data entry so that we can at least have a starting point.
Okay.
So if you want to, you know, just let me know when you have copies available and I'll come down and pick up a packet and start. So.
There you go. Okay, next one is for the newer members, and you know, Paula probably knows this inside and out, but there's a couple of handbooks out there that might be helpful to you. Is also a whole pile of acronyms that you'll start hearing. It'll be new to you. And, you know, so I wanted to include that and make it available to you as well as the website. The other piece of it was the next meeting. We talked about that, right? And the desired agenda. Clearly, I was hoping to share with you the Ashland piece, or just some of the highlights of what I saw, but I'd love to hear what else. Paula, you might have data benchmarks from the other players that you've seen and witnessed. If you could pass them along, we'll try and find some common features that they're all saying, and that allows us to focus better on that. So benchmark what's going on there. I've got some. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ann.
A couple of things for the agenda. I mean, I'd like to talk about the scope of work that the consultant's doing. Hopefully we'll have that by then. We can talk about it. I'd like to talk about the website. You've tasked me with coming up with some ideas, so I'd certainly like that to be included, and I can certainly share the grant information that I'm able to find. So, you know, those are things that we talked about tonight that we should follow up on.
Okay. And Rob, you can come up with your list of things that you think will be most helpful to you in helping you carry out your job. And, you know, we don't want to get in your way. We can't stop the things you're doing. I like having my road plowed, and I'm not excited about half your crew sitting in a training session on how to clean out storm drains when I can't get down the road, that kind of thing. So if you could come up with what is helpful.
I will do that.
Okay. Is there any visibility we can start getting into the whole financial side of the equation? Is there anybody in the town hall that breaks out the DPW line items and things like that in your budget?
I mean, I have a budget that, in fact, it was just submitted. Heather and I will be discussing it probably next week. Yeah, I mean, anyone can take a look at it. It's what specifically are you looking for?
Well, I'm interested in saying, okay, approximately out of each one of those line items, where are you devoting efforts? Where is the cash going? Is it going into stormwater? Is it going into the regular piece? You know, and there are loads of ways you can come up with an estimate on that, but I think just getting an idea of what line items you're playing with, and then we can at least do some sort of proportional guesstimate in terms of what is currently being spent, and then that allow us then next to later on to say, okay, what else are we going to have to spend to do the things we're talking about, which we don't have a complete list yet, but it'll give us
yeah. I mean, in the current budget, again, this is something I have to sit down and do, which is estimating what is actually being spent on collectively all stormwater tasks, whether it's cleaning catch basins, replacing drains, street sweeping could tie into it. Those aren't broken down on a line item type level. And so that's something I have to kind of put together.
Right. If we know right now, we know we're spending less than 10% or addressing less than 10% of our catch basins, right? So we can probably extrapolate some sort of number, whatever you come out with, saying, this is what we would have to spend if we start cleaning all those. So that's just a way of, we're just trying to get a sense of what the ground looks like. We're not trying to come up with solutions just yet, but
Yep.
that piece of information would be really helpful.
We do have a stormwater line item, correct?
Yeah, we do. There's a stormwater line item, and that's primarily geared towards the MS4 compliance. That's the consultant for the most part.
Right.
There's a smaller line item for drainage, and that's typically, I've used that for, a drain collapse, we had to replace it, or we had to fix a catch basin. More of the daily type of things. I don't have a line item for catch basin cleaning. It's in the highway budget.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying, yeah, there are line items towards stormwater, but it doesn't cover the gamut of what the DPW does in terms of everything stormwater related.
So if you could give us an overview of what was spent over the last couple of years on the stormwater line item, I'd be interested to know that,
Okay.
as well as the catch basin line item, or the drainage line item.
Okay.
And then understanding the budget for this year, what line items are potentially spent on stormwater, and then if we can start tracking this year, to some degree, to get an idea of the costs, that will give us the first step towards a financial picture.
Right.
Mhm.
And the other side of it, Rob, there's some hidden costs that went along with it. Like we redid all the roads around the lake up here. And there was, we put berms in and we put other pieces in there that could conceivably be identified as stormwater activities.
Yeah, I mean, we put in all kinds of berms, and typically it's related to stormwater because, you've got rainwater going down people's driveways from the street. Boy, I mean, if I tried to cover it, I'll try and come up with a list of everything we do.
Give us a sense of what you think.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's bigger than what we think right now for sure. So, but the interesting thing about, we always try to get an idea of how much are we spending on this out of the 5 million or so has been spent on stormwater, and we could never really get an answer in terms of what they believe. But part of it was we didn't define it for them. You know what I mean? And guess what? A berm is part of stormwater. And so we need to just continue to explore that cost side, and what does that incur? What does that entail? So,
And I don't know if you saw it, Rob, Heather late this afternoon sent out what she was able to find from Jack's breakdown. So we do have what was reportedly spent on stormwater. And I took a very cursory look through it, and it does seem to be stuff like berms, catch basin replacement, catch basin resetting, reconstruction, pool work, that kind of stuff. So that there is an accounting of what was done in that, and that might give a basis for extrapolating capital work on an annual basis over time with road reconstruction.
Yeah, and Adam, I did see that, and to add to kind of what you're saying, so I think that was the accounting of the $500,000 that was part of the payment management plan. And so again, in what I was getting at is, so that's some of it as a bigger piece. If the goal is to separate all stormwater function out of DPW into an enterprise account, it's really, lots of spider webs heading everywhere, into everything we do daily. At least some component of it is got to do with stormwater. So I think I just really need to sit down. I'm going to sit down with my superintendent, and we're going to kind of come up with a list of the things we do that are related to stormwater. And then somehow, some will be easier than others to, approximate a value of that work, because we have, and others will just be approximations, but that's where I've got to start.
Okay. So if anybody has if there's any more ideas for the agenda, send them along. We'll certainly get them in. And if you have any other great ideas or any of the reports that you think could be interesting
One other thing that I
sure, Paul.
talked about in the past is systems that aren't owned by the town, or systems that are owned by the town, large systems for developments, detention ponds, retention ponds. If we can somehow try to come up with a list, and Adam, I think that would probably likely be you, I think that would be helpful. And moving forward, we're now requiring the reports to be submitted annually, which is something we hadn't done before. But getting an idea of where those are and what kind of maintenance has been done on them, I think would be huge. It will take a lot of time, but for the first step is to find out where they are.
Well, the consultant does do an annual BMP inspection of those facilities and has for 2 or 3 years now.
Okay,
They've done 2, and the email from Nick earlier this week said that they plan to do it during the growing season, so they'd be out there April, May-ish to start doing that. And what I don't know that they're necessarily tracking the work that's been done, but what they're doing is they're ensuring that they're functioning properly and making any recommendations for maintenance that may need to be done.
and where does, I guess my question is, knowing that type of schedule from the committee perspective,
Mhm.
what Nick's doing, when he's doing it would be very helpful, because I don't know if anyone else got that email, but I didn't, but knowing.
No,
that
that email just went to Rob and Heather and myself.
Okay.
You've all, I believe, been forwarded at least the BMP inspections.
But I'd like to know, what is the work that they're doing and when are they
Yeah,
gonna?
and that'll all be in the contract, and that's, yeah.
So,
Okay.
and obviously what they find.
Mhm.
Anybody else have anything else? I'm at 9:03 and my score is going to go down if I keep you much longer. Okay, so anyway, any other comments from the members and such that we might consider adjourning?
When are we gonna meet again?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay, so let's do that.
I think
Well,
we-
our schedule is the third Thursday,
Third Thursday of the month, so it would be
which
the
would be the
17th.
15th, 16th, 17th.
Yep.
Right, so it would be, I
17th.
thought we said the third Thursday, right? So it would be the
Yeah.
17th.
That's correct.
and I'll be on the road, but I'll call in. I'm gonna be down in New Orleans. Okay, so.
Okay,
Okay, the last thing is, before we adjourn, the question we always ask is, how can we get better? And did this meeting meet your expectations? Now, everybody gets to say yay, nay, overwhelming, based on the agenda.
The agenda could be more focused.
Okay,
yeah, I think we have to have clear to-dos, and I think now that we have some, I think we've gotta
Shoot
Have
for
a-
shorter, more efficient meetings.
yes, exactly. You got it.
Is it?
Todd.
We moved
Always
through-
the goal.
we had 17 slides in 2 hours.
But
We
it's better
never
to
actually
cover
voted.
5 tasks or 2 tasks in depth in 90 minutes than
right.
it is to rip through 19 and have everybody's head spinning.
Yeah, this is not untypical of trying to, when you first get started, trying to understand what the heck is out there and wrap your head around all that stuff. And then very quickly, we're going to go to what are the few key things that are critical? And we're kind of dependent on Rob on that one, but
So
yeah,
top thing for me is some goals and objectives for us to accomplish over the next couple of meetings.
Yeah.
And we have a few that I think we can accomplish and really start to delve into in detail. I'd like to delve into things more detailed, like Adam is saying. I'd like to focus on a couple things and then maybe the next meeting move on to something else and try to go over with a broad brush.
right now as I said, we're in a current state. We've got new members and we've got folks that have been around for 100 years, the old guys. And then we've got some folks that have a totally different perspective. So I think that, yeah, more focused agenda, clear to-dos and goals and objectives, but don't force the problem solving just yet. Let's
No.
continue the discovery. And we're
Okay.
discovering stuff. Like we've pointed out that we want the scope of the work, the website, the grant info, what will help.
So one of the goals we've just we've just talked
Yeah.
about is understand what work the consultant is performing and what tasks the DPW perform. That doesn't necessarily mean we have a target, but that's our goal, is a clear
Yeah.
understanding of the process.
And we're getting budget information and the systems that we own and not owned in terms of ponds, detentions. We've got new report requirements that you've indicated have come along. I don't know anything about that. And they want to hear specifically what the consultant's doing, and maybe you want to invite them in. I don't know.
Eventually I do.
Yeah. So that's what I've got so far. And when I finally get a chance to reading the minutes from Dawn, right, Dawn? Are you thoroughly confused yet? You
Need the handbook.
need a handbook.
I need that handbook. I'm gonna get that handbook.
Downloadable. So there's a lot of stuff going through, and we then we can start getting down into it, and Matt, hopefully, and John, you see some potentials where yeah, we're gonna need your help, and you, because you have all that perspective, you got real world perspectives, and so that's where we're going. So I will put something together, and it is 9:07. Sorry about the 7 minutes over.
Motion to adjourn,
I'm all for
Second.
that. All those in favor?
roll call,
Aye.
Todd, Paula,
Aye.
aye.
and myself, I. Rob, you want to stay around for longer, or are you just
I'm going to bed.
go to bed? Good
Me
night.
me too.
Thank you, everybody. Feel
Heather,
better, Paul.
Night.
Heather, are you gonna throw us all out
All
now?
right, all right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good
night.
Night now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Hey, Matt.
Jack,
still
how you
there?
doing?
Oh, real good. Hey, thank you so much. I know
Yeah, absolutely.
you're getting into the deep end real fast. And honestly, there's a lot of stuff that we're not used to, but you did a good job. Thank you.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was good, and like I said, a lot of things being covered tonight, but I think it was a good start, good outreach. So I like
Yeah.
it.
And if you know what, if there's any confusion or whatever, give a holler. I'll try and explain it best, or point you over to Paula. Betty, just call Paula. She'll tell you. Right,
All right.
Paula?
I think she's walked away.
She just walked away. She's probably grabbing something. She's not feeling so well, so I suspect that she didn't go for a drink. I would, but I can't. You know what happened to me? It's a
What's that,
tragedy.
Jack?
When I had my gallbladder out, they gave me either the antibiotics that they put me on or the anesthesia they put me on. And I woke up, and a day later, after all that stuff, I went to have a drink and I couldn't touch it. It
Wow.
burned like hell. It hurt my stomach. And so it just like, well, maybe I'll wait a few days.
Sure.
And you know what? It hasn't gotten any better.
No better.
No better.
Wow.
I don't know if this is a curse or a blessing, but I do know if Paul is listening, when she had her gallbladder out too, she had the same response to coffee. She had
Really?
Paul, you still there, girl? No, she left. Yeah, same thing with coffee. I kind of wish it'd been coffee. I had a wine cellar full of crap down there, and I can't.
It's just sitting around for a while.
And I'm Irish,
Good.
Matt. We're built for this stuff.
It's a coping mechanism.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
Hey,
geez.
Tom, how you doing? Oh, he hasn't closed it yet. Okay, so anyway, we'll talk to you soon. And
All right,
thanks.
Jack.
Okay, take care, guy. Yeah.
Excellent. Take
Bye-bye
care.
now.
Bye now.